Hey there, Paula. Sorry about the technical glitch we had today and getting you the link. Really apologize about that, but we're very glad that you have managed to join us today. I'm not sure how many Zoom calls you go on, but we we do these quite a bit, and this is the first time we've ever had this particular issue. So thank you again for your patience with us. We hope to have other people joining us, but I don't want to delay any further because we've got a lot of information to get through. One of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do is to use the chat box feature, and you can hover over your main menu there and it will bring it up under the 3 dots of more, and then you click onto the chat, and I'm just going to write a little message. Thank you for joining us. Here's where to type your question. Okay, so we have found the chat box hopefully by now, and I really welcome your particular questions because when we started last week on the best renovations for return on investment, one of the things that we emphasized was getting into the buyer mindset. Today, what we're going to do is delve into some very specific recommendations about renovations, and I'm going to give you some of my realtor's eye view as to the things you should and probably shouldn't bother wasting your money on. So here we go. There I am. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams. However, my intention here is to really come from contribution, bring you excellent information so that when the time is right, you can make a good decision as to what's best for you and your particular situation. We call our company S.M.A.R.T Realty Solutions because we recognize that everybody is in a different situation and that we have to tailor make solutions client by client. We're never going to ask you to fit into our box. We're going to come to you and meet you where you are. So we did these webinars originally as seminars in person, but we've had to adapt. Like so many of us, we've had to adapt and change and find ways to communicate with our client base. That's actually, I love it. It's kind of convenient, but we really do encourage you to type in your questions so that we make sure that you don't go away with still having some of those things unanswered, okay? We try to anticipate as best we can. So let's get going. Here's the order of events. Welcome. If you're not feeling welcomed yet, I welcome you. And we are going to just spend a bit of time recapping what we talked about last week, which was getting into the buyer mindset. And then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of setting a priority and also establishing a budget. Because, you know, there's no sense in the world in me giving you some pie in the sky expectation of what you're going to do if the budget just isn't there to support it. So if you have some budget, let's just talk about how we can work with that most effectively. Because I have been into homes where they spent a whole bunch of money on the master bathroom. Like, this is legitimately a real life example. She spent a lot of money, maybe $30,000 on the master bathroom, but I so wish she had just taken that money and sprinkled it around the house so that the whole house was fairly consistent, rather than having this spectacular bathroom and the rest of it kind of being meh, you know, ho-hum. So your buyer is, if you understand who your ideal buyer is, you can kind of shift into their mindset and establish for yourself what the principles should be of renovating your home. So they have a couple of major pain points that we're going to get to, but most of all, the thing that people ask me is, you know, besides decluttering, which is the most important thing you can do, what should I be doing to attract that new younger buyer? You know, is it a big expensive? Well, you already kind of know, because I let the cat out of the bag. I don't think huge money are required. I think it's just really addressing what is likely to come up when a buyer walks through your home. So we're going to kind of put ourselves in their shoes and see that they are busy, they are very heavily in debt comparative to probably a generation or two ago, and they don't have a lot of skills to bring to the table when it comes to DIY. You know, there are more and more people who are jumping on the YouTube videos to learn how to do things, but, you know, overall, they're not as well equipped to handle big projects. So they'd much rather hire people. This is something that I've learned from my kids. They would rather hire somebody and have the time back. But then it puts that as a budget consideration for them. If they've only been qualified up to 1.1 and your house is at 1.1, but they still think they've got to do $75,000 or $80,000, they might eliminate your property from the contention because they just can't do both finance and renovate. So because they are highly indebted, we want to make sure that the unattractive, the unsexy things are taken off the table. And we're going to get to that in a second. So that if they ever do find two nickels to rub together, they can do it. They can spend it on the things that they really value. So let's get into that. They don't have a lot of time and they don't have a lot of money. So they still want to move into the suburbs. And we are seeing this more and more, that people are exiting the city core and they are moving north as COVID shutdowns have required them to work from home. And now they are looking in the markets of suburbia because they're no longer tied to the downtown financial centers of Toronto, right? So that's where we really see a huge demographic shift. In 2019, when I was speaking with my clients who might be downsizing, I had significant reservations as to whether anybody of the millennial generation would want their 4-bedroom, 2,500 square foot detached home with a backyard that nobody ever uses, et cetera, et cetera. Well, all of a sudden now it's gold, and people are looking in unprecedented numbers into the suburbs and even further afield. So they're seeking after a shifted definition of the good life. When they were going into an office every day, they were looking to live close to their office so that they could reduce the commute time. Now, when everybody's working from home, they're looking for a bigger house and some green space for their kids to run off some energy, and everything has really, really shifted. So when we adopt their mindset, it helps us to look at our house with fresh eyes as to what we should be doing to make it appeal to them. That's why we're spending any time about the buyer. It's so that you can really evaluate your particular situation from that lens, okay? I just want to remind you to type your questions into the chat box, okay? I want to make sure that nobody leaves here with questions unanswered, and I really would love to hear your particular points of view, your particular problems. But this general principle that we're laying out here of thinking like your buyer hopefully will inform the renovation choices you make. Okay, moving on. So we don't want to spend too much money on renovating the house. There are some things we should do 100%, but I've been noticing that some of the renovations are being made with very strong design choices, and that's going to turn off as many people as it attracts, maybe even more, right? I've been into some condos lately that look like a casino or something. They are so blingy. They're so blinged out that my clients just can't even imagine living there with their own furniture. It would be like they'd have to sell everything off and buy all new. So we don't want to turn people off. And it's very hard to predict what that particular buyer is going to want. So I'd rather you keep things to a minimum, especially if you have to up your sale price in order to compensate for the renovations you've just done. So you could end up pricing yourself out of the market. If you have to list your house for $30,000 or $60,000 more than the house down the road because you've just spent all this money on renovating it, I think you have to be very, very cautious about that approach. I'd much rather you keep it to a minimum and fix it so that you are getting the maximum return on investment. And that's the whole point of us being here today, okay? So on the other hand, because life is all about balancing truth, we do want to deal with some of the things that a 35 or 40-year-old house is bound to present. The most important thing is to take your house as it is now and broaden the appeal. Okay, just going to park that there. Take your house now and broaden the appeal. So what does that look like? It means very moderate, very middle of the road, very, in some words, boring type of improvements. You're not going to get the big bling factor, because what we really want to do is we want to take your house and the very tiny number of potential buyers who want to be in your neighborhood with your style of house and can afford the price. That's a very small number of the overall buyer. We just want to spread that net as wide as possible and catch as many fish in that net as possible, so that when they see your house, they're considering it with seriousness, right? We also want to make sure that your home holds its own against the competition. Now, I don't know where you're watching from. We end up attracting people from far and wide, but where I live in north of Toronto, wow, there is no competition. I recently did a property evaluation for somebody who was interested in selling their home, and in this fairly wide swath of probably 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers, so in a 25-kilometer radius, there was only 2 homes for sale. But that doesn't mean you can just slap it up on the market and say, well, it'll sell. It won't. We are also seeing that homes that are not well presented and not prepared for the buyer, they are sitting on the market, even in this crazy overheated time. It's surprising, but we want to make sure that yours is at least in the running of the beauty contest, right? We don't want runner-up. We want to win the beauty contest. So let's talk about that. We always start with free and low cost. There's no sense in putting in an expensive, upgraded kitchen if the rest of the house is a disaster, right? This is what I have actually seen. So we want to make sure that we have a consistent picture throughout the home where we've really addressed some of the red flags that could turn potential buyers away from your property. And this is not rocket science. I don't claim to have a PhD in property renovations. This is just common sense, but you need to hear it from somebody who can tell you it can make the difference between a sale or no sale. And it can make the difference between how much your property fetches. That's the only reason to do any of this. I'm not trying to make work for you. I'm trying to make money for you and the resale value. So we're going to deep clean. I've had buyers who literally walk in and walk out because the house smells like cat. Well, not all cat byproduct. And that's something you just cannot overcome. And I'm not suggesting that any of us live like that, but in general, we're creating an impression of the overall maintenance of the home by how clean and fresh it presents. And again, this is, a no-brainer, but we sometimes skip over it. So it's the equivalent of trying to sell a used car without having it detailed first, right? Like if you went and you were test driving a used car and you saw that the mats had all been cleaned and they had done armor all on the dash, that's far cry from my van that has coffee rings on it and, leaves that have blown in and stuff like that. So we really want to make sure that the home right from the get-go presents as being well maintained. Because just like if you were to go in a minivan right now and look at it and I was selling it like it is right now, you'd think, wow, I wonder if she's been doing her oil changes. I wonder what else I should be looking for. So Buyers equate cleanliness with being well maintained. Now, the other thing we're going to want to do is to depersonalize. Again, we covered this last week, but I just want to reemphasize that these are the values that these are the value added things you can be doing right now, 12 to 24 months ahead of selling your home to get it ready for market. And I can tell you, I see this principle violated all the time online. But think of it, you've got people looking at your home's pictures, interior pictures. You don't want pictures of your grandkids or your university diploma up on the internet. It makes sense to depersonalize anyways. So we want to take down everything that is kind of your personal mark on the home so that it just presents as neutral, so that people can see themselves in the space, right? That they're not looking at your house, they are imagining it as their house. So we're going to really, really depersonalize. And of course, we have to declutter. I understand that we all live with far more stuff than we need. But this, if I told you that every bag you took out of your house was worth $100, like, I don't know, I'm just kind of making that up. That's a totally random statistic, but it is that important. You don't have to do, well, that's not 100% true. If you did nothing more than declutter your home, you'd still do far, far better in terms of the sale price and the quickness that the property sells and the speed at which it sells. Okay, so decluttering is so important. We have a whole other webinar about decluttering because it's what holds people back from selling their house more than anything else. You know, if you're here, it's likely because at some point you are recognizing that your home isn't going to serve your needs, or maybe it doesn't even quite serve your needs now. Maybe you're like me and you're an empty nester, or I have one kid at home for another 6 or 8 months. And you see the time when this house just really doesn't suit you anymore, but you don't want to sell your home because of all the stuff in the basement, which, if you think of it, is, you know, that's kind of crazy. We're living in homes bigger than we need to store stuff we don't use. Anyways, don't get me started. So that's that. And then we want to deal with the repairs. We talked about why this is important, and just very, very quickly, we'll review it, is that anything that you know is broken, you're responsible for. And it's going to come up when your buyer asks for a property evaluation. And even though many, many, many homes are selling right now without any kind of conditions on them, believe it or not, people are going in with firm offers just because there's so much competition. We still are responsible for those things. And they're still going to write in clauses like, that you warranty that everything in the house is in good working order. So if you know that your back burner on your stove doesn't work, or if you know that there's been a problem with a leaking roof, or whatever it is, especially like a wet basement, those are the things you have to take care of before you sell your house, because it's going to end up, you're going to end up having to negotiate reduction in the sale price. And that's what we want to avoid at all costs. Okay. So repairing anything that you know ahead of time is a very, very good practice for preparing to sell your home. And you can start working off that honey-do list now while we're all in shutdown, right? Okay. Other questions, comments? Anything that you're hearing that doesn't seem clear to you, please feel free to add it into the chat box, okay? That's really important to me. And we are going to get to the questions at the end. I always leave enough room for question and answer. So paint is a great investment for selling your home. If you've lived in your home longer than 8 years, I arbitrarily make that number up, but if you've been living in your home more than 8 years, I'm going to recommend that you get it painted before you sell. Just because, first of all, there's trends in paint colors, right? Does anybody know what the trend in paint colors is right now? We want to make sure that your home looks up to date, that it's also about looking fresh, and all the kind of marks on the walls and all of that ends up just being part of everyday living are cosmetically disguised, and the house just really looks so much more contemporary and clean. It's not cheap, I know painting is expensive, but it is definitely the best bang for the buck when it comes time to renovations. So nobody answered my question about what is the current paint color trend. Every year, Bear and Benjamin Moore, they always put out these color trends of the year. But in general, we have two camps of neutrals. One of them are towards the grays, the cools, and then the other ones is to the light cream, light parchment, off-white color. And I would be perfectly happy if you were to paint your entire house on either of those two palettes. You just have to consider what's going on with your floor, what's going on with your counters, all of that, right? As to which camp you're gonna vote in. But that builder's beige, I'd be so thrilled if your whole house was builder's beige, because we're going to bring back some color to your furnishings, your carpets, whatever we bring in for staging, all of that. It's not like it's going to be a total snooze fest. And then it's also very neutral so that buyers can imagine moving their furniture in and not having to fit into your color scheme. Okay, so we hinted at this last week about setting priorities. Since none of us have an endless pot of money upon which to draw, let's just talk about what are we going to set as our #1 priority and down the line, right? So what is going to fit as #1? Well, we did talk about this last week, is that we want to make sure that we are eliminating red flags that are either going to cost you the sale in its entirety, or it's going to cost you money at the negotiating table, where people say, oh, you know, that house needs a lot of work. So these are the big ticket items, and these are things like the roof, the windows, the furnace, any of the repairs. If your garage door is kind of hanging a bit, you know, drunkenly, then those are the things we want to really make sure ahead of time have been identified. So this isn't renovations per se. This is maintenance that has been deferred, that you've pushed off into the future, that should probably have already been done. But now that you have a financial incentive, we want to make sure that I can say to your potential buyer, hey, the basic mechanics of this house, the mechanical systems, the roof, the windows, those are all up to date. You just have to make some cosmetic changes to suit your particular style. My client asked me if I should tear out this or that, and I said, no, let the new buyers do it, and we've adjusted the price accordingly. But if you start getting into needing new windows, new roof, new furnace, you can see that those big ticket items could really turn young buyers who are financially strapped off of purchasing your house. They might just decide to go down the street where there are fewer red flags. And that's what we want to try to avoid, right? Okay. So as I mentioned, dealing with red flags is really just dealing with deferred maintenance. And renovations are what you do to add value. Those are things that are perfectly good, but you've decided to upgrade them. They're working fine. But then what we're dealing with here is maintaining worth, not increasing worth, but maintaining your worth, so that we don't in any way have to discount your property as a fixer-upper. So fixer-uppers sell all the time. We can sell any home in any condition, but what's the thing we have to deal with? It's the price. We have to adjust the price to suit the condition of the home. And if you're wondering what your neighbors' homes are looking like inside, there's, you know, when you see a new listing come up for sale, take a look at the interior pictures online, and you'll see where you fit relative to your neighbors. That's a great way. In the old days, I used to say to sellers or people who were getting ready to sell, go to the open houses, and you'll see where your house ranks in comparison. So we see this all the time where homes are on the market, but they are not in the market. In other words, they're just not competitive because buyers are being driven by the same thing that we all are. When we go out and we want to buy something new, we're looking for the best condition at the lowest price. That's just human nature. And those two things are kind of held in tension, right? That we want fantastic condition, but we also want the lowest possible price. And the buyer's agent's sole job when working with that client is to try to negotiate the lowest possible price for their clients. And my job, on the other hand, is the opposite, to try to get the highest possible price. So we want to make sure that you are not just on the market, but you're in the market. Okay? Questions? Comments? Lots of times people say to me, what if I'm living in a neighborhood where my property is likely to be demolished and redeveloped? Anybody have that situation? I still think that you should attend to the issues that you know about your house unless you absolutely cannot afford it, because likely that redeveloper is going to want to lease out the property, rent it out, while the property building permits are being finalized. They need to continue their cash flow. So if your home couldn't be rented out as is, it would make sense to try to fix some of those things. But that's a very small percentage of people typically. In general, this is what we want to make sure we're attending to. Now, this is the fun part. This is where we get into some real hands-on recommendations about the cosmetic improvements you can be doing. Okay, keeping in mind that we want to spend as little money as possible to get as big a result as possible. Okay, so we're going to concentrate on paint, flooring, light fixtures, and hardware. Flooring is a potentially big ticket item, but I want to show you some different options. Okay, so look at this kitchen. This kitchen has all of the same bones, but we've taken it from a 1990s oak kitchen to something much more modern. I'm sorry that the photo is a little bit fuzzy wuzzy for the after, but the backsplash, I can't remember if the backsplash, well, it looks like it's been changed, but it's really hard to tell. But we've changed the light fixtures, we've painted the cabinets and changed the hardware, and we've painted out the door, the trim. So you can see how even with just this level of cosmetic improvement, we already have so much broader appeal to today's buyer. Today's buyer almost uniformly wants a light kitchen. We have had a huge resurgence in all white kitchens come back, but you can see how this adapts it with the dark colored stone countertops, right? Now again, this is mostly just paint. Now this bathroom vanity is a fantastic idea, and I've recommended this a ton of times to my clients. This is the same counter, it's the same faucet, it's just a painted out cabinet. And there are companies who will do kitchen cabinets and bathroom cabinets. I have 3 or 4 of them. This is kind of cropped up as a business unto its own, where they take everything off the hinges, they take the doors out to the factory, they fill in the holes where the old hardware was, and they spray paint them in a factory, and they get a fantastic end result. But this is in the potential of do it yourself, right? So this is a big update and improvement. And again, in the hallway there, like, I know as Canadians, we hate painting wood. We really do. But unless you have a heritage home or a home with a lot of architectural interest, the average builder's suburban home should just have the trim and molding painted out. Okay, it looks like a little bit like a funeral parlor in the before. And this is totally not the aesthetic that today's buyers are looking to engage with. So we want to, in general, lighten and brighten and neutralize wherever possible with the cosmetics. Do you see that they even changed out the staircase just by painting out the risers and leaving the treads? How much, you know, nicer and more modern this looks. A lot of people, you know, there's always somebody who says, no, 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 I like the original better. But I'm telling you, you're not the buyer. The buyer is going to say they want light and bright. And you'll notice the wallpaper's gone. Sorry. Taking down wallpaper is a really awful job, but it's kind of important. So when we are spending money, I want you to not only think about the cosmetic improvements, but also prioritize the main floor. Again, thinking like a buyer, if you have a dark colored bedroom, or you know, it still has broadloom up in the bedrooms or whatever, those are just small self-contained projects on a weekend. But if your entire main floor is a strong color or is very, by today's standards, outdated looking, then that really lingers in the buyer's mind as being a much more daunting project. So talking about main floors, what I encounter most of all in properties that were built in the 80s and 90s is broadloom. And I'm going to tell you the bad news. Along with wallpaper, broadloom is very poorly received, especially on the main floor. So everybody wants to ask about hardwood. And I want you to know, like, there is a range of possibilities. There are basically 4 levels of flooring options that you can choose from. And if we're talking about gold, silver, platinum, and bronze, I don't know, I'm going to suggest that the gold standard for a main floor is the solid hardwood planking. And this is tongue and groove. It's usually nailed in place, sometimes also glued, but we've got a solid wood floor plank. It's usually like, I think it's like 5/8 of an inch as a minimum. And it's got this protective coating on the top. And obviously you can have this refinished again and again, probably at least twice, maybe 3 times. And that includes even changing the color. So solid hardwood is expensive, and we're going to get into some prices in just a minute, but that's the gold standard. And if you have a luxury home, if this is something you're considering, you know, that is probably the very best I could hope for. But there is also engineered hardwood, which, as you see in the second picture, it does have a thin veneer of actual hardwood, so it looks like hardwood, but it doesn't have any of the changes that can happen with hardwood floors with temperature or humidity. It's a much more stable product, and it's also a lot cheaper. It's probably half the price of solid hardwood floors. So it's a wonderful option. And if I was going to say, unless you're going to be enjoying the hardwood floors for years to come, I would do engineered hardwood. I would definitely do engineered hardwood as opposed to real hardwood if the purpose is to resale. Now, we also have this other product, which is laminate. I really don't recommend laminate for main floors unless it's maybe bathrooms or, you know, it's mostly meant for basements, in my opinion, because it just has a photographic picture of wood. It doesn't read like real wood. They are getting much, much better in terms of the quality, but in general, I think it's kind of not to be used unless absolutely mandatory. If you cannot afford any other option and you have worn out carpet on your main floor, then this is better than the worn out carpet, but maybe not by much. It's really almost to a case by case. And you know what? I have a great idea. If you have pictures of your main floor, or if you have pictures of your house at all, and you'd like my professional opinion, why don't you send those to me? You can do it by email or by text message, and I'll look at your particular case and give you my recommendation. You're free to disregard my advice. It's just my opinion, but it is backed up by my experience in the marketplace. Okay, so there's one other product I want to bring to your attention, and that is luxury rigid plank flooring, vinyl plank flooring. And I really do like this product, and we are seeing it in main floors, surprisingly, because it doesn't have the problems with laminate. With laminate, it always ends up kind of curling up at the ends. Eventually it can shift in place. This just doesn't have that problem. And bonus, you can lay it over existing flooring. So if you have ceramic floor and you wanted to cover it with the rigid luxury vinyl plank flooring, you can do that. It can sit right on top of your existing ceramic. If you were to do laminate, eventually you see the ceramic underneath it telegraphing through. It will get dips and valleys. So this is a terrific product. I'm going to use this in my own house. I'm planning a main floor renovation because I have a dog, and they're very hard on floors. Plus it's waterproof. It comes in styles that look both like wood and also that look like stone. So you can use it. I plan to use it throughout my main floor, like all the way through one solid pattern. But this is a really great option, and it allows you for a decent budget to be able to do the whole house consistently. There's one thing that I hate is when I go into a property and we've got a whole bunch of different floors going on. Sometimes they don't match. And the biggest area that we see this in is staircases. I cannot tell you how many homes I've been into where the main floor is beautiful hardwood, but they still have the yellow oak staircase, because staircases are extremely expensive to replace, like maybe $14,000 for a new staircase. And then every tread has to be custom manufactured if you're planning to cap off the stairs. So let's just talk about staircases, because we see this all the time where the staircase has not been renovated, but the main floor has, and it just looks such a mismatch and so piecemeal. So let's talk about the picture on the left, where we have the oak handrail and the spindles and the treads and the risers, and they've done painting. This to me is the cheap and cheerful way of updating, especially so that it matches your main floor. This is a really great option. It's not cheap for you to hire out, but it might be DIY. It might be something you could do. There are a lot of time-saving tips that we can send to you about painting this out yourself. It requires a good standing and just a lot of time. And that's why it's kind of expensive to contract out, because it's fiddly, time-consuming work. Now, in the second case, you'll see that they had carpet on the stairs in the before and the after. The carpet's in good condition, and it's fairly, it's a neutral gray color. So what they just did was, when they painted out, that you notice that the floor has changed. So they went from the yellowy oak to a more walnut color, and now they've changed out the spindles to white, which is very modern, and the handrail, the pickets and the handrail and the newel posts, they've painted black. So it's a much more contemporary, up-to-date look, but it still has the original carpet. Now, if you have carpet that is worn and dirty over time, it cannot be refreshed. If you pull it off, what's underneath? It's not hardwood. It's usually just particle board or plywood. So then you're into a big, big expense of having it recapped with hardwood to match your main floor. It might be worth it. You have to really kind of do the investigation as to what it'll cost. But I love this idea of the runner. So they've painted out the treads, they've painted out the risers, and then they've just run a runner up it. And it disguises the fact that they haven't capped the treads in oak. They haven't made that kind of custom job, but it so improves the look, right? Am I right? So there are companies, again, who do nothing but staircases, and we can point you in the right direction if that's something that would be of interest to you. But I'm going to tell you that in dealing with the floor, it becomes like domino effect. If you deal with the main floor, then you have to deal with the staircase, and then you have to deal with the upstairs landing. What do you do then? Right? So lots of times what I recommend is the cheapest, if you have to replace the carpet, the cheapest remedy is more carpet, to replace like with like, so from carpet to carpet. And you can get a nice neutral Berber that doesn't have too much pattern, in a light gray, and that can really, update instantly that staircase. So you can see in this picture with the dusty rose carpet, this is really an issue that should have been dealt with a while ago, but now they have an incentive and they're planning to move, so they do it. And that's what we talk about with deferred maintenance. It'd be pretty hard for a young buyer to want to bring their family in to a home that is carpeted like that. Okay, and finally, I just really want to encourage you to make sure you leave enough money in your budget to deal with the exterior so that you are creating a positive first impression. And here's some before and after. The builders are notorious for putting up very inexpensive coach lamps. They get pitted, they get dirty, they get rusty. So swapping out an exterior light fixture is such a great up-to-date improvement. Or even just taking down your old one and taking it apart and spray painting it. Like look at that, the difference between the pitted brass and the black. It's very contemporary, it's much more attractive. We also want to make sure that we've addressed some of the foundation planting. Maybe it's a matter of new mulch. Oh, I love new mulch, especially in the spring when they come and the garden companies will deliver the big bags of fresh mulch to cover the gardens, refresh them, make them look a little prettier. And most of the time we talk about keeping your color palette very, very neutral. Well, there's one exception to this, and that could work. That really can add a pop of color that's appealing. And I would say that we don't match the front door necessarily to the garage door. The garage door should still be neutral. We don't want that being the focus of our attention, but a front door that has some color can be really a nice touch. Okay, so don't forget the outside because it sets up the expectation for the rest of the home. So you can see that when we go onto a sliding scale of value, kitchens and bathrooms still pay back the best. And then you can see the rest of them. Now, with the roof and the windows and things like that, it may not be that we can, like, it adds value, but what it does is it prevents buyers from walking away from the deal or trying to discount you. So I can't say that we can charge more for your house because it has a new furnace, but at least we don't have to worry about it seeming like a fixer-upper. I would say that windows and roof, because you see them, are even more important. So along this lines, we do have a question in the chat about to renovate my upstairs bathroom by eliminating the bathtub shower and instead just a stall only. Is it wise to eliminate the bathtub? Well, is it the only bathtub in the house? That's my question back to you. You've got to think that if this is the only bathroom for the family, I would be a little bit reluctant. If you think your home is going to be resold to a young family with children, yes, they can use a baby bathtub. That's not a huge thing. But I don't know if it's the only bathroom if I would take out the bathtub. That's really, really tough. Bathtubs are becoming a thing again. There are either shower people or bath people, and it's like never the two shall meet. And for some people, they wouldn't care about a bathtub, and other people, they really would, whether it's for their own rest and relaxation and to escape the kids, like with a bath bomb and a book and a glass of wine, or, you know, they don't care. And so it's a little hard to predict. I'm not sure that we'd want to eliminate potential buyers by eliminating a tub. You might want to make it, what's the real trend right now, are standalone tubs, you know, or a clawfoot tub, but I don't know if you necessarily want to go that far. It's going to have to be based on whether or not it's the only bathroom. Okay, so that's my answer to you. Now, if you have been living in your home a long time without doing very much major to it, I want you to think of this basic budget model. We're going to allocate $10,000 or 1% of your home purchase sale price. So we're assuming about $1 million sale price on average, let's just say. So we're going to take 1% or $10,000, and that will be what we use to paint and declutter and clean. Now, obviously, the more you do of this yourself, the more money you'll save. But if you had to hire it all out, this is about right. I've seen that it's between $6,000 and $8,000 to paint a house, and then, you know, if we're having it professionally deep cleaned, that can be another $400 or $500. And if you're having to get in somebody to help you with the decluttering or purchase totes or whatever, yeah, we could spend that $10,000 fairly easily. I also want to tell you to set some money aside for staging, because staging is pretty much a requirement these days, and that can run you anywhere from, say, $1,000 to $3,000 depending on the size of your house. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're setting aside a little bit of money for the professional stager who will transform your house. Unbelievable. Come back for our staging workshop, and we're going to show you what you can do to cut down on even that staging bill. If it's been 15 years or more, maybe you want to set aside a bit more of your sale price for taking care of the mechanicals, making sure the roof is all up to date, and also perhaps dealing with replacing the carpet. So the question becomes, if I spend $10,000, will I get back more than $1,010,000? And the answer is 100%. You will. You definitely will. You could see a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 return on just doing the basic $10,000 paint, clean, declutter. Yes. You start, the more you spend, the less return, I can assure you. That makes sense, right? So $20,000, if you replaced your roof and did those things, would you get more than $1,020,000? Yes, you would. And most of all, you wouldn't turn people away. So you see what I'm talking about here. The longer you've been in your home without doing very much to it, the more you're going to set aside to prepare it for sale. $50,000 sounds like a huge chunk of money, but it can get eaten up pretty quickly by dealing with the previous list, plus perhaps repaving the driveway or a new front door or getting the cabinets painted. To paint out the kitchen cabinets is around $3,000. And I know that sounds like a huge amount of money, but it's way cheaper than actual new cabinets. So just, of course, depending how many cabinets you have, whether or not you have a peninsula or is there an island, whatever it is. So it can add up, but wow, can it make a big difference? And you might even, if you did all of this, let's just pretend you did all of this, I think you could probably double your return. So if you were to spend $50,000, and I'm not suggesting you need to, but if you were, I bet you would see $100,000 in benefit. Okay. So what does it cost per square foot? Well, these are in Canadian dollars, and this is relatively recent. So you can see that laminate runs the gamut from $1 a square foot to $5 a square foot. engineered hardwood, again, it's all about the quality. And also, I don't say no carpet. Sometimes carpet in a bedroom can be a great idea. It's quiet, it's warm. And if we have to choose between not replacing the carpet on the stairs and replacing it with other carpet, you've already heard me say that I think that's better. We also talk about hiring a painter. It always depends on how much prep work they have to do. Are they having to go in and fill the holes and sand them? Are they doing ceilings? Are they doing trim? Are they doing doors? Or are they just doing walls? So as much as you can do yourself, you know, that will also cut down on your cost. But this is what you should expect. And as I said, a whole home is somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000, depending on, of course, the size of the home and how much of that finicky work they have to do. Okay, and we're always looking for white trim, white ceilings, white doors, if possible. And then painting the kitchen cabinets. Yeah, it can be inexpensive and it can be very expensive. So there's lots of options there, and we can point you to the right resources. So how are you going to spend your $10,000? That's the question for you. What are you going to do to increase the value of your home? Now, we're talking about countertops. What the preferred countertop choice now is quartz. It is superior in most people's mind to granite because it is inert. Do you know, like, quartz is a semi-man-made material. They take rock dust, they take pigment, they take polymers, and they create a very uniform product, where with granite you can get a lot more variation in color. This is something that can be applied and cut into various shapes. You can put a pot down on it. It's great. I think when I do my kitchen, I'm going to be using quartz just because it is terrific for the durability. But there's also, you know, there's also laminate out there that's a very good, close copy of it. So have a look around online. You can see counter options and you'll see what exactly the cost is there. Now, bathroom renovations. Anything from $8,000 to $1,000 up to, you know, whatever. It depends on the size. I just did a bathroom renovation down in my basement, and it was about $6,500, but you know, it was a pretty small little 3-piece. It had a shower stall, sink, and a toilet, and that was about $6,500, and it made a big difference. Made it really nice. And I think we can do a lot with bathtub reglazing. If you have a bathtub that looks kind of a bit grungy or pitted, or it's got rust marks in it, there's a lot that we can do. We have this fantastic guy who comes in and reglazes bathtubs. That's his entire business, is reglazing bathtubs. And you can actually even paint your shower tiles as well. That's a great option too, without having to replace them. So this is if you were doing a complete renovation, but again, we want to stick with the cosmetic. Paint out the cabinets if at all possible. Save money wherever you can. Okay. So a lot of times people want to know, well, what would my house sell for in today's market? And if it's been more than a couple of years since you have accurately evaluated your home for value, this might be the next step for you, is asking me to prepare a report for you. This is not just me kind of guessing at it. It's really pulling out the comparable numbers from what's been selling in your neighborhood. And then you know your budget for renovation. If you know your home is now worth $900,000 and the last time you checked it was $780,000, you can see why you have a little bit more options to boost it up in terms of its cosmetic appeal, right? So how much is your home worth? What could you do to improve it on a case by case? And how do I prepare for selling? These are all questions I can answer for you on an individual basis. And you'll see that the report that we provide for you is a multi-page report. It takes me a couple hours to prepare. It's not something that I just guess at because it's really super important. So if you'd like one of these, this is completely free for the asking without cost or obligation. Okay, so this is often the next step for people, is while they're thinking of the things they should be doing, they want to know, well, what would I sell for? And is it even worth me putting any money into it? Okay. Any questions, please write them into the chat box. We'd be happy to provide you with that report. It's a great way of knowing where you stand in today's real estate market. You see? So we pull all the properties that are sold, and it shows you kind of the interior pictures as well, so that you can see how renovated they are. In resale homes, we've got unrenovated, so that means that they're completely original from the builder. We've got completely renovated, where it's been a gut job and everything is brand new. And then most of the homes kind of fall in the middle. Some rooms have been renovated or some things have been improved, but not all of them. So we have to really kind of rank your house to what's going on in your neighborhood. Now, before you do anything in terms of spending money, deal with the most obvious thing, and that would be the decluttering. If you would like to join us for our 30-day decluttering challenge, we'd love to have you with us. This is an email campaign where every day for a month, you get yourself a task with some tips, and we help you get started on the most important thing you can do to prepare your home for sale. We also have our additional webinars that you see there. I love the one on staging. It's coming up, and it's so much fun because it really helps you to transform your home with not too much cost. Some of the same things that we've been talking about, but now amplified to the topic of visually marketing your home. We also do condo tours. This Friday, we're going to be looking in Richmond Hill at condos, because for many of my clients, that is the next step. They wonder, well, what's the condo market look like? And unless you have a friend in the market, how would you know, right? Unless you know somebody who lives in a condo, how would you ever see the inside of condo buildings? Well, we're going to show you. Usually it's 8 or 10 condos, different price ranges, but usually kind of in the middle. We don't typically go above $800,000, and we always look at 2 bedrooms or greater. In Richmond Hill, we are blessed with some 3-bedroom units, so that's always fun. I try to show you a ground floor unit where you can have a little patio, and also a penthouse where you have great city views. There's no right or wrong. There's no agenda. There's no sales job. It's just giving you information about condos, because it's kind of its own product and it has some special considerations that we want to share with you. We also will be sending you an invitation to it so you can sign up. We'll also be sending you this presentation so you can review it. Okay? And any other questions? Please join us on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. We are everywhere. And if you have any questions, I love talking shop. Don't think you're interrupting me. There's pretty much nothing I'd rather talk about than real estate. So please bring your questions to me at any time, and if you review what you've heard today and a question occurs to you down the road, I'm always here. I have no life, so it's been my pleasure. I apologize for running over time, and I'm sorry for the technical glitches that we had at the beginning of our presentation. I think we figured out where it went wrong, and it's the first time we've had that problem. So we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay, so I am going to sign off with gratitude for you being here. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments, we welcome them, as I said. Okay, thank you. Bye for now. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Hope to see you next week. Maybe